Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Brooks. Join me as I sit down and chat with co-hosts, friends, and carefully curated guests and talk about all the things that empower you to become your best and most confident self. So, let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Confident Woman Podcast. So, today we're going to talk about gains. And what I mean by that are the gains that we gain from the losses we've lost. So we talked about a few episodes ago, just kind of this transition period that, number one, I'm embarking on. It's just kind of this awkward, weird season that I'm in. And I've been pretty transparent, I think, over these past several solo episodes. So if you don't know what's happening, please check those out. But also if you want more and want to know what's happening, just ask. Shoot me a message on my favorite platform, Instagram, and just reach out to me. I'd love to connect and hear from you guys. Really, some of these powerful topics and conversations that we're having here on the podcast, but also inside our community group, which is the Facebook group, The Confident Woman. So today's topic, we're talking about gains and loss. And so we could talk about that from a perspective of going through these transitional seasons that we're in, where I have just been experiencing just a massive, massive change in my life from the woman I'm literally becoming, like this version of my own version of the confident woman, to rebuilding and rebranding probably close to 90% of my business, to the community and what we're growing and doing inside there, to the new programs and offers that we have been implementing for the Confident Woman brand. Like, this has just been an incredible season. And, we're building up partnerships, and we've just launched our incredible new season for the Confident Woman Impact Accelerator. And our program is just this incredible 8-week journey and experience to really, go after the life that we want, to let go of those limiting beliefs, to boosting our confidence and creating a vision that we absolutely love for our lives, so that we have something to now put on our vision board. And that is the life that we are going after. So if that is of interest, definitely check out the links below in our show notes for the Confident Woman Impact Accelerator program. But what I wanted to share there is because had I not gone through this entire season and started taking accountability and responsibility for my life, these changes would not be here. And these changes, and I share this because so much goodness has come out of the reset, the hard reset. It's kind of when you hit that big red button and says, reset. And then you get the caution button that pops up and says, careful, are you sure you want to hit delete or reset? It's going to, erase everything. And you're holding your breath and you're like, do I? And then you hit the big red button. And that is what happened this past year. So over these past several months of hitting that hard reset button, we have just taken a major shift in the business, in the Confident Woman brand, and including myself. And so all the good that has come out of it, like I had just mentioned, our programs, our offers, to stepping things up and doing a few things differently on the podcast, for our engagement in the community group, to the conversations that we're having, and all of this, really, the reason I share is because had I not done that, I wouldn't be here right now having these conversations. So I think in this period of gains and loss, those are a few of the gains, but I want to talk about some of the losses. Now, I talk about the loss of, when we think of loss, we could think, a loss of a loved one, or a loss in a competitive sport or a game. And what I mean by loss is a loss of one's identity. And I think that this is just, again, a powerful conversation, because I think what happens, and this, again, I'm pulling this stuff from my own personal real life experiences, is I think that when we experience loss, it's not so much of the external or the physical thing that we have lost. It's the loss of ourselves, a piece of our identity, or in some cases, our entire identity. Maybe we have to reinvent ourselves to become the person we need to be to go after this new life or this new direction or this new path. And I think for many of us, we teeter that I don't want to let go of who I am because I'm afraid of who I will become. And I think when we start holding on to who we're currently, if it's not serving you, and mind you, this is if it's not serving you, that if you start holding on to who you were, your life will continue to move forward with or without you. And that has been where I found myself just straddled between the person I fought so hard to become. And that's all told in my story, Chasing Perfection, A Journey to Healing, Fitness, and Self-Love. And the person that I find myself now years later. And in this season, and if you go back to a few episodes ago, I'm sharing a little bit more on this vulnerable and transparent side of me. So bear with me. This is real time. I'm practicing. So I'm a work in progress. But in those changes and in those seasons that I was trying to rebuild my life, but I'm using an outdated program, if you follow along here. That programming were my sets of beliefs, my thoughts, my values, my priorities, my boundaries, the things that I held true to who I was as an individual, as a person, as a human being. And the direction of where I wanted to go. And let me just break this down for you. So I'm trying to voice this out so it makes sense. But the direction of where I wanted to go, I couldn't get there as that version of me. But that version of me that I had to become, I couldn't even fathom that. And that's where life comes in and says, yeah, we're going to shape you into that person. So don't worry about it. We'll help you get there. But you're going to endure some hard stuff. And if anyone can attest to this, that's where the refining comes in. That's where we get put under the pressure, right? And that's where we come out as this, well, supposed to be a beautiful diamond, but sometimes you just come out like a big old mess and sobbing tears and you're like, what the F happened? But that's where we come out on this other side, refined, defined, right? So we had to go through the fire to appreciate this beautiful life and this person that we can become that feel more in alignment. So having that as like the gain, because realizing the loss was the loss of myself, the loss of my identity, the loss of the vision that I thought was where I needed to be or the goal. And oddly enough, in my gains of discovery, I realized the vision is still the same. It's just I had to take a detour. Or maybe I went on the detour. And, I guess I never know because I don't get a GPS for life. But I veered off course somehow, some way, and was about getting clear and restarting from a different perspective now. And having that restart can sometimes feel like a huge setback. But the beauty of that is resetting and restarting. You this time around will have such a huge advantage because you're not starting from square one. You're starting from years of experience. You're starting from the moment you decided we just need to reset, right? So you're starting with so much history, so much credibility, so much experience, so many resources in your tool belt, from your connections to your shared experience of good and bad, to the network, to your insight, to the knowledge and awareness that you've now gained, right? So not all loss is bad, and not all loss is permanent. And, as I go through this season, like I was sharing, I lost over last year, I would say I lost myself. I lost my body that I fought so hard to finally have a relationship that I absolutely loved with myself. That if you've read my book, Chasing Perfection, I struggled for a lifetime with body dysmorphia to eating disorders, disordered eating, self-image, self-esteem, all that stuff, right? And through fitness, it helped heal me. But when that was taken away during pandemic, I lost pieces of me and I lost that drive. And in that loss, it felt like more loss and more loss and more loss. So losing that to losing pieces of my business to having a whole life change and nearly losing the most important person in my entire life, to the loss of just friends, the loss of what were once loved ones. There was so much I experienced, and this is just in that past year. So it's crazy because I felt like I had hit my lowest of lows. And at that season of my life, I had literally nowhere else to go. But the differences between this time and burnout and exhaustion and all that hitting rock bottom stuff, different from last time, is I was able to recognize it this time around. So the impact wasn't as hard, but the aftermath was pretty bad. But it was about picking yourself up and sorting through the pieces so that you can rebuild on your own terms, and rebuild again with the pieces that you had once had, and picking them up and bringing them into this new season and rebuilding a life that you absolutely, absolutely love. And so this is, again, the season I'm in. I'm a whole new person with a whole new passion and outlook on life, a whole new business and a whole new strategy and a whole new, just really amped up level of who I am becoming. So I challenge you to really dive into your own experiences and start questioning what it is that maybe you feel like there's pieces that you've lost. And ask yourself if those are pieces that you are worth exploring to rediscover, or if those pieces were lost for your protection, for your redirection, for this new version of who you have to be. So I challenge you to really take that reflection, that self-reflection, and see what good has come from some of the most difficult hardships in your life, whether it is current in the season, these past 3 years from a pandemic, or years that maybe you've been carrying around some of these experiences with you that you're having a hard time accepting or letting go. Because with letting go means, again, giving up, losing pieces of yourself. But when you let go, you literally are freer. You have less weight that you're holding on to. You have more options, more of everything, right? Because you have nothing holding you back. And sometimes, again, letting go can feel so damn hard because you don't know what is waiting for you next. And that might be just as scary as holding on to what you know is not needed or necessary for the new version of you that life is calling you to step into. So I would love to hear more of this and the conversations that we're having. We're talking about all this real time in our programs, in the Confident Woman Impact Accelerator, in the Confident Woman Community Group, on the podcast. We're everywhere having these conversations because they need to be had. I needed them. I know that many of you need them. That's why we're here, right? We're having them today because these are so needed. So if this resonates with you, again, I would love to hear from you. Drop us a line, slide into my DMs. I am Rachel Brooks on Instagram, or come check us out on our Facebook community group, The Confident Woman. So until next time, take care. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Confident Woman podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thanks again for listening.